Okay, that's fine. Uh, so the goal of this presentation is talk a little bit about right to information and why it matters for Asha for education as such. And let me see. So first, let's talk about what it is. So it's become an act in 2005, almost 14 years now, and it's about, as you all know, so you can any individual can submit a request to get some information from like any government authorities as such, and it covers all constitutional authorities. Okay. However, there are different departments. One is central and one is state, and the way they react can vary a bit. But private bodies and NGOs, they are usually not covered, and unless they are getting like 95% of it, and political parties, there is a gray area there. And last year there have been a lot of noise because this RTI has been diluted, and actually what has been done is there have been a lot of new things are added there. So there are now a specific format where you have to apply, and there is a limitation of number of words, there is a limit of how many questions you can ask, and also you cannot ask have too many application for the same thing. So that's about it. And the process, usually you have to apply as an individual, you cannot apply um, as a like a group or something, and you have to wait for 30-40 days, and it depends how you ask for the response, and usually it matters a bit. But if you do not get a response, or if you are not happy with the answer, then you can go to higher authorities. Okay. Now question is, we are an organization that works for betterment of, let's say, education, and also in some cases for disadvantages, like children for their whole, like whether that's children from, let's say, hostels, or providing scholarship and things like that. Why should we care about all these things? So one thing is, their family has to survive. Okay. So many cases the family has to migrate, and that's one of the reason also that students move from one place to another. They cannot stay in their school for long, or they have to quit the schools, and there are a lot of issues for which there is a family sustenance is important. So like food, water, electricity in some cases, and other things, that for that, as well as, which is very important, that many places where there is not many job opportunities in our EGA, the 100 days job that is confirmed by government, that also needed a lot of kind of RTI. Second is, in my previous talk last year, we discussed about right to education, and for right to education, there have been a lot of rules, but they are not followed in schools. For example, there is a number of teachers you have to maintain. You need to have a toilet, drinking water in school, and there are many other infrastructural rules that have been forced, or like made an kind of a law, but they are not followed. So when they are not followed, it's a reactive process. So you have to apply for an RTI, why it is not followed, give us the information, how much budget is allotted this year, and things like that. And also private schools have a 25% rules under RTE, and that there also RTI can be used. And a very important aspect is, for example, if you want to, one person has to avail the individual government schemes, and they cannot just when they go to a local, let's say, block division office or even panchayat office, and they say that we don't have money, or we have not got any information about the scheme. There is no way other than, first you ask, and if they say that we don't know, or go away, or they ask for, let's say, some cash, some bribe, then this is another way you can try to ask for a solution. So especially many cases where you are supposed to get a scholarship but you are not getting, like the children are not getting. Then for your house, there are a lot of like money allotted from Swachh Bharat for toilet and you are not getting. Similarly, there is this Indira Vikas Yojana where you are supposed to get money for housing but you are not getting. You ask for it. And lot of funds for health, and when somebody dies you are supposed to get money but you are not getting, and also pension. These are the regular things that also connected to family sustenance as such. Now there are of course localities also you need to ask for funds, because if the road is not good and let's say somebody died because of accident and all, you can ask when it will be fixed. And that matters in village and urban both areas, right? Rural and urban both areas. So that's why maybe we should care a bit. Now let me go quickly to some case studies. One of Asha chapter that is in UP. I'll cover one rural chapter in UP, one urban chapter in UP, and a project in a rural area of West Bengal. Okay, and so you can understand how it is followed. And for example, in Rajatalab, it is used extensively for Coca-Cola movement. And if you don't know about that movement that has been done in Asha India, it was like some areas in Varanasi, the Coca-Cola has set up a plant, and that has completely polluted the water that is used for agriculture. And they were not going out, they are just obviously they made arrangements so that they can continue doing that. And then RTI was extensively used, where how this no objection certificate NOC is given to them and why it is given to them. And so there it was extensively used. But yeah, that's not education, but it matters because the agriculture was severely affected during the time they operated, and now they have to close down. And they were especially after all these efforts for almost 10 years, I guess. And then it's also used for the NREGA, which is like 100 days job that government assures that if you don't have other jobs, government assures 100 days jobs. And for that also RTI is used for applying for job card. Like, so you need a job card, so that that's the first step, you need a job card. So there you applied, but you didn't get your job card for a year. Means that's another way to stop people from getting funds, right? So there you have to apply for an RTI. Where is my job card? What is the application status of my job card? And second, you worked, and there have been like delays, like 6 months or so delays in payments after somebody works under NREGA. And there also they have used it. And a number of work days is always a big problem, because UP is very populated, and government doesn't want to spend so much funds. So usually instead of 100 days, people get 10 days, 12 days, 15 days. So individually they have applied. And Asha doesn't do it for them, they do it. Asha just provides them the training. And because most of these people are not literate, so they don't have any formal education. So usually that's one of the key ingredient as well, that they have to know how to write, but many of them don't know how to write. So Asha kind of writes it for them in sometimes. And also or guide somebody in their family, the younger children who can read and write, they train them, and so that they can apply for their family members. And in panchayat levels, even if it is applied individually, they have asked for like individual toilets, funds for roads, and funds for health centers, and also the funds that are how much funds are allotted for government schools, and why there are less number of teachers, and all these things they have used. Okay, for they have used RT for. And then they have kind of also used RT, like they have 150 plus help in filing application. And also they have kind of sometimes help them with the fees. Okay, and then certain things, as I mentioned, the 2019 amendment effects happened also, that the number of questions are like allowed words, that as I mentioned already, that has kind of limited the scope a bit. Okay, and let's do a case study of Asha Kanpur here. So Asha Kanpur is, because it's an urban area, it has a different kind of problems, and one of the problem is also related to RTE, where doesn't have enough government schools or good government schools in that sense, and also it has tried to kind of like 3,000 to 4,000 students into private school under the 25% rule, and initial state was like to understand if the school can accept students or not. If the school are ready to accept students, so that so they have to file an RTI for to check the school status, that okay, so and when they know that the school has to accept 25% children from underprivileged background, then they have to also, next step was that many schools have selected the students, but they didn't allow them to admit, you know. So like for 6 months it's selected, the name has come out, but they are not allowed to admit to the school, they are not allowed to go to the school. In that case also they have to file an RTI application. Second is, as you know, in UP, electricity, drinking water or access to water is quite a bit of problem, and it has not solved yet so much. It used to be like people used to get 15, like when I was visited there 2.5 years, 3 years back, and it was like only 8 hours to 10 hours a day you get electricity. Okay, so and summertime it can get quite worse even sometimes. So now for those kind of problems they have to apply and ask why we are not getting electricity, and then a lot of cases people apply for meter and they are not getting the electricity meter as well after 2 years after application. And I know, for example, in one of our projects the transformer burst, and for 1 month there was no electricity in the village, the full village was completely dark, and they have applied for a meter, but for 6 months nobody was. The thing is that when you have a meter, then you can file a different kind of you know, like a complaint, and when you don't have a meter you cannot file, they will say that you don't have a meter, so they just delay the meter application process anyway. So the usually what the feel is that replies usually do not come, but things get done. So people usually do not put one more they usually do not put one more application, and they just sink it right there. Okay, and recent days, of course, the rejection numbers have been increased, and there are some third-party reasons that have been cited as well, that you ask for this information, but this is provided by this private company, and this private company has their own security rules which doesn't come under RTI, so sorry, we cannot provide you the information. And also there have been recent rejections because it is not in the correct format. As I told you that in 2019 it has been diluted a bit, and that's what is going on right now. And if you want to get some really bad numbers, so there are 49,000 cases that are pending, 29,000 fines have been imposed, but no, none of them are collected. Okay, and but I got this information from our fellow Mahesh Pandey that it varies state to state. Okay, and some states supposedly that are not that you know, like doing well otherwise, but Chhattisgarh, for example, is doing pretty well in terms of RTI, so it gets resolved in the scheduled timeline. Also Uttarakhand is doing well. Okay, now let's talk about rural West Bengal, which is not very different if you think about it. It's there, it is used for ration and job card application. So ration card also you need for food, you know, if you want like 2 rupees per kg rice or something very cheap. And recently, some of the cases you don't have to pay even. If you have a ration card, you get like 5 kg rice and let's say 2 kg dal every month or something like that. So there are some rules, some things that have become better, and for that you need a ration card, and for energy you need a job card. They have used it for reviewing the exam marks, and that's also have been kind of shown that sometimes these exams, madhyamik or ucha madhyamik or some other exams for scholarship, the marks they have been problem, and they ask for an RTI, and usually after that things get better. And in some cases where they have a scholarship test and there is definitely this error in adding the marks, then they have applied for it and suddenly they got the job and things like that. Similarly for old age pension schemes, and they are currently using a lot for Annapurna scheme, which is, as I told you, for food security, and especially for beggars, like the people who don't have any means and they beg for sustenance. They are trying to push this RTI so that at least they can get their ration card made, and they can get this under this food security scheme. They can get at least food. Okay, so they have applied for, like, they have helped in 350 plus applications, and their primary role has been awareness training and writing application, as I said. And also sometimes it's much easier just to tell government employees that they want to file an RTI, but like we want to do it ourselves, so why don't you just make it happen? So they usually make it happen. A lot of people, some like scared of this application, even they know that if they found guilty or something, and if some information comes out, nothing will happen, but still people don't want to get into that case phase, and they want to get just things done. Okay.
Hey Padmanava.
Yes.
Anu here. Sorry, I had a question regarding this topic that you're just talking about. Do you want to take questions now or after you're done?
We can take questions.
Okay. So my overarching takeaway in general about RTI has been that, yes, if a certain situation is not working out, then we have the means to make it happen, right? Like the how of getting people to do what they're supposed to do or get information and so on. What is it that we can do to go one step back and say, how do we, now that we've figured out a way to get people to do what they're supposed to do by threat, how can we now, through education or whatever, teach people not to do such shit in the first place? And do
no, they're not doing, they're not just doing that, because there is no means. If you don't do, nothing will happen, because that takes much bigger, like it's just like see, for example, you go to bank and then the bank manager says, sorry, our server is down. So if you will say this is not acceptable and things like that. But mostly my parents, even if they go, they will say, oh, sorry, it is not working. Okay, I will come tomorrow again. And they are told the same thing next day. So that is the, so basically in India, most people are not that empowered to consider themselves as a customer. And there is also, because like Western countries, almost 50%, 70%, 80% people give taxes. India, 2% people give taxes. So 98% people do not give taxes. So no, none of them give taxes in that sense, or in a position to give taxes. So there is no.
Sorry. This taxation, I mean, literally 100% pay in this country. Our proportion of indirect taxes is higher than any other country in the world, I suppose. So most of us pay very substantially high proportion of indirect tax compared to the direct taxes. So everybody pays taxes. So that's what I want to say.
Yes. So, but Balaji, like question is, but the mentality that if somebody, I think there is a mentality of fear in general among people, that this government officer, if he doesn't do his job and I complain, or I just go to him and he says no, I have nowhere else to go.
I agree. So my question is primarily directed that I feel like we, Asha, as an organization, should not just also work with whatever are the existing problems, but also try to do a root cause analysis and try to see, because we have, I think, a slight advantage that we get access to children and like people at a much younger age than, people who are already completely rigid in their mentality. And so for that, what can we do as an organization to promote activities that will change the mindset? So when you say it is a mentality problem, I agree, which is why RTI is treating the symptom and not the problem. And I'm looking to see if we can come up with ideas where we can address also the cause of such mentality. And that was where I thought if you had any sense of any idea of what could be done.
I don't know what Balaji means. We'll also really appreciate if you have some suggestion there, because this is more in the what we can teach in the school, or what we can impart, what knowledge we should impart in the children of today, so that when they grow up and they face these problems, they are not living under the fear. And they means demand rights, means basically as a citizen people have a lot of things. The government is saying as a citizen you have these hundreds of schemes if things are not going well, but people are usually lost, or they don't know what to do, how to do. And even if they are told what they can, they are they have the right to access to these schemes, they kind of, if they go to the officer and they say sorry, then they are just kind of, oh, I am lost, they feel helpless. Actually, I think the goal is to so that when they grow up they don't feel helpless. Do you have any suggestion?
Okay, I'll just step in here. See, firstly, RTA is a tool. Okay, it's a tool. If you use it well, it can definitely help you in enhancing, arriving at the solution. Okay, so if people don't use it, and if they are not clear about how to use it, then actually there's no use of having the RTA. Now, to give you an example, let's say you have a problem with a government officer. You have filed for some application, and the application are not getting cleared. There could be multiple reasons to it. Many times you will be lost figuring out what is the reason for that application not getting processed. It could be at the entry level, it could be at the next level, it could be at the final level. Like for example, Tulur has now applied for their certification for school. What happens is it goes through multiple process. First the district office is clear, then the multiple officers clear, then finally it goes to state level officer, and he approves it. Now in our case, it's very clear that how the process is going through, and we know now it's stuck at the state education officer level. Many times, if people do not know, if the paper is stuck at the state education officer, they will be trying to waste their time fighting with the district education officer. And he will be dodging the whole problem. He will not be helping you to solve the problem. Where RTA helps you is, it gets you a very clarity about the entire process, and it helps you to solve the problem better. Okay. Now, if you are not clear what the problem is, if people are not sure where the issue is, then it's of no use. Unless first step is, of course, to understand where the problem is. As here you are saying the old age pension scheme. The rules are laid very clearly. It's up to us to help to understand the rules, and if the officer is found not applying the rule right, we can always have a reason to file some complaint. My observation is, many times when you file RTI, the officers get alerted. They know that now their work is getting exposed or becoming transparent, and that itself is a incentive for them to make sure that they do their work properly. See, all said and done, if the officer is smarter than the fellow filing RTI, the officer will easily dodge it. To be very honest, I was working in a government office and I have dodged RTI applications very, very easily because the guy who filed was complete dead. Okay, so it's a question of first, people should understand that why RTI is there. Second, learn how to use it. Third, work on it and improve it to arrive at the solution. If people are wasting time, if people are not clear what the problem is, and if you're just, filing complaints for nothing, then it's very difficult to use RTA.
Okay,
So,
fair enough.
so one of the thing is to be maybe from early age to understand that there are different there means people should not feel helpless. There are these are the things. So maybe I don't know, means it's not a bad idea if the students let's say from class 8 or 9 are made aware. So basically all our NGOs who run this awareness training, they can make a teenage version of that, and they can start telling people that
Yeah,
basically when the let's say scholarship, right? So I will present in my next slide only that there are a lot of things that actually can impact a student from early age that is involved in RTE and RTI. So why they should not be knowing that?
Mountain Children's Fund. We had supported them in the past, and you can go look them up. But in UP or Himachal Pradesh, I think, is where they have basically trained teenage, middle school to high school children about RTI and made them the ambassadors of RTI for villages and villages. And that is where I was going with my question, is that we cannot have a cottage industry of NGOs doing RTI awareness, but once you empower the local population through one of these examples being educate, teenagers and little kids, then we move on to other problems and solving those. And this is, goes into maintenance mode.
Yes, because that also has another means there is another motivation for doing that, because the current generation is more educated than the previous generation. So in many cases it's the first generation learners, right? So if there is something to file, they have to know they have to file that. So it's much better also to kind of get them in that like all those Nishta kids where they are trained and things like that. Okay, so moving on.
Yes, please continue. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so I means maybe one more question I add here. See, this is just a few things I wanted to present, but we can add more questions into it. So this is more, I thought like maybe it makes sense that project stewards or when we accept a new proposal, we should think about a few things that we should not do what government is supposed to do. So that's why the first question when they try to build a new school, we have to ask them why you are building a new school. The government school doesn't, they will usually answer the government school has 1:100 student teacher student ratio, so we need a new school because the government school, or they can say the government school is local language medium and we want to build an English medium school, and things like that can be there. So we have to ask, have you tried to empower the local school system, the government school system, using RTE, RTI or not? And means I think we should ask that question, other than funding this new school, and they have, because they again have to get in a lot of approvals to run it and all. And then when we are trying to provide scholarship, for example, we should there are a lot of scholarship schemes even many NGOs don't know about, and like many marginalized communities, there are specific scholarship, almost everybody can get it if they are from certain communities. So there also, if they are not getting traction, I think that also we can do, because so that we don't spend the funds, the government's funds can be utilized for that. Third, by especially we have projects with government schools where there we are providing the additional teachers, and also we are spending some money for the school infrastructure, and we have done it a lot in the past. Thankfully we are not doing so much these days, but there is one solution to it. They have to file an RTI application, and it may not work, but at least that is a first step, rather than saying that, oh, we talked to the government officer, he said they don't have funds. So and also of course this is much more serious issues when food is a scarcity, and especially after flood or after a natural disaster, or when after a very bad year of agriculture, or for migrant population in cities who just migrated from rural areas to urban. I think they should be able to avail all the schemes where at least they should be able to survive rather than being completely malnourished. And we have to be very careful and very strong when they say that, oh, everybody is corrupt in India and things like that. We should not encourage such answers. Next two slides is a very kind of initially I outlined a bit. It may not be that accurate, but just to say that it's usually what a student goes through in a rural area. So first 8 like class 8 till class 8 in government school, then usually they do not go for a science stream, they usually go for an arts and com stream, and then 10 12 college, and then usually they either drop out or they pass college or diploma, and then they go through, if they drop out early before 10th or so, they either have to do business, or they usually do farming, or have to take additional training. And if they don't get a job, they have to move to city. Okay, and if they get that much of things, and they can, again, they may not be still in the rural area. So one of the, at least personally, I believe one of the biggest problem India is facing these days is this rural migration. And one of means lot of these things related to, in the early days, maybe school infrastructure, so that they get a good quality of education. Second is their family should be well fed, they should have electricity, they should have water, drinking water especially. And then when they are, even in some of our projects we have heard, when somebody told me, some students told me that they have to drop out because they didn't have 2000 rupees, whereas they didn't know that there is a scholarship they can avail for being, either scheduled caste or scheduled tribe or some other communities, or being a woman, being a girl student, and things like that. They just didn't know. So that's where scholarship comes into play. Then there is a lot of government schemes also for jobs and business, starting a new business, as well as for kind of getting additional training. And when you get a job, either you settle in rural areas or urban areas, you need all these other tools, schemes for sustenance. Whereas slightly different in an urban area, maybe all in the first portion, where you can also avail private school via RTE, and the water electricity problems becomes also still there, and other things may remain the same. But finally, yeah, sorry.
This is Mohit. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Finally, my microphone is working.
Okay.
Sorry, I had a question on the scholarship access. What sort of scholarships are available? Like, and is it like the need-based scholarship, and is it what would the child use it for? Like, the education is free. Is it used
No,
towards?
education is not free after class 8. Education is not free after class 8. So there is a lot of issues that start happening after class 8.
Okay.
So like you get your books and uniform and midday meal till class 8. After class 8, even sometimes the midday meal stops. In some cases, in some schools, somehow they arranged the midday meal for everybody. But that's one of the biggest problem, that a lot of people, lot of students do not continue after class 8 because means one of the thing is also they were told that they are old enough to start earning, or kind of they don't, earning and not getting paid for education, so it's double negative, right? So kind of that's why sometimes family pressure, sometimes just not able to avail 2000 3000 rupees a year. And if there is one girl child, one boys, like if you have brother and sister, usually the sister has to drop out. I'm talking more in the context of North India, okay? But maybe it's the same thing everywhere in India. So then, also there are special kind of schemes where even for getting a cycle, like for example, West Bengal, UP, that these are the two I know more of. So the girl children are given cycles, okay? The guys do not get it anyway. So and in some cases everybody gets a cycle, the mother, father, everybody. So these are the things like why cycle is important, because the the especially the intermediate schools or the colleges where you get your 11 12, that's usually sometimes not in the village itself. It's somewhere, let's say it's 5 to 10 kilometers away, and like either it's mm, cost of the transport, or sometimes the regularity of the transport, or even sometimes just that maybe 5 or 300 rupees per month cost, that can be enough for somebody to drop out. So that's why the concept of cycle. So there are a lot of things, not only scholarship, a lot of the money, and also for science, for example, because science studying in a college, in a government college for science, is costlier than arts and commerce. So that's one of the reasons also many students, even I know about Andhra Pradesh, because in this case and also in West Bengal, they just cannot afford that extra money. So they just, even if they are very good in that, but they usually do not pursue that. And once 10 people pursue that, the 11th one also is kind of follow them. So that's
So,
kind of thing I'm talking about.
okay, so these boxes in orange you're showing is basically you're talking about the traditional path that is happening
Yes, the
currently.
traditional part, but this is just my personally what I have seen, and what I have faced. The problem that currently, for example, the number of jobs we have, the number of skilled jobs we have, and the number of unskilled, the unskilled number of jobs is much more than that, and so there needs to be trained. And like there are, we talk about the success stories, but the success stories are actually very limited, because they're just the best cases. We have a lot of medium cases, and it's up to the chapter or the project steward or the organization to choose whether they want to have one superstar, or they want to have 60-70% students doing well in their life, rather than one. So that's the whole story. So that's why government scholarships are not always merit and need basis. So sometimes they're just, if you are from one specific community or one specific gender, you get it. And sometimes it's merit based, but the bar is very low. Like if you get 60%, you get that scholarship, or 50% you get the scholarship. And as far as need is concerned, sometimes the whole village falls under the need. Means like if the need is that your family income is less than 5,000 rupees a month, some of the villages have almost 99% people falling in that category. And the 1% who are actually, they either send their kids to an English medium school, or a kind of sometimes some residential school. So it varies. It's very difficult to kind of generalize, but this is my sort of generalization. Not that accurate, but that's what I thought. Is basically this is the cycle of a student. So there are a lot of opportunities. At least personally, I saw that little things can be fixed, and then the student's life will be much better kind of situation. Okay, so that's what I was thinking. Like, so RTI, like any bridge, can help. Like RT also did the bridge, so kind of do a bridge. Not go into this more, but basically only 5 to 10% have the opportunity and choice and parent self, and 70-75% don't have that. And like actually government has enough rules and acts and even if we are not proactive on that, but we should be aware and we should ask the right questions so that we don't do government's job. And yeah, means I had a few homeworks, but we can send it out later. But I felt that we should read the proposal carefully and the items we are supporting, and we should not like, for example, if somebody says, oh, the midday meal quality is so bad, so we anyway make a new kind of meal for the students. We said, why? We just file an RTI or something so that the midday meal quality is better, and things like that. And background of the community is important, and why we have to be active in that. And also we have to check with partner what they have tried so far and how they have tried, and better be skeptical in the beginning before accepting the project completely or all the items, rather than later figuring out that they have taken a shortcut by approaching us. They could have done it through government, but because applying to government and asking for money and then following up, it's a long process, so they just followed, they just got easy money and that's about it. So that was few slides I just put together.
Padmanava, one question
Hmm.
on your last slide. I mean, do you know if we are funding any sort of partners which are actually trying to do RTI, just to kind of get a school in an area, like in a remote village, and have they
We
had?
can easily, because at least the all the projects I have visited or all the partners I have been in touch with, almost everybody has done RTI in one way or other, except the very small ones that follow in with a very small group of children. But then also they have done RTI, and we can ask if there's any specific questions you have. Like we can just ask our project group if because in some cases, for example, that let's say in a very remote area or in a tribal area, sometimes if the school is not done, their arrangements have been made, and if the arrangements are not made, then RTI usually helps, as much as I know. As I told you, most of the cases I know about RTI, you file the RTI and things get done if it is a doable thing. If you are asking for why I'm not getting 24-hour electricity, I demand an answer. No, that's not going to happen. But if you are asking that, even some cases, teachers for example, some government schools are really dearth of teachers in West Bengal, but there they have filed multiple applications for years, but it didn't get solved. But I think if you want a government school, I think that's a very valid way to go for RTI, because that's as long as it has, I think there is a rule like 30 or 40 families have to live in that radius and things like that. So, but if you have any specific question for maybe a project you are stewarding or you
Yeah,
want to take up that.
I think I do. So, I'm working with the Gramin Shiksha Kendra project partner, and they started a school with our funding. I mean, back in
Where is it?
2015. It's in Rajasthan.
Okay.
They started in Girirajpura village, and that village was newly established in, I think, 2014 or 13 by the forest department, who were trying to move villagers from Ranthambore Tiger Reserve to this new place so that they can kind of free the tiger reserve of human population. So they were relocated. They're still fighting for the land rights for that village. I mean, they have not gotten the transfer of rights yet. And
Okay.
so, but then there is also no government school. The nearest government school is, I think, 5 kilometers away. So that's the sort of, again, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if it's a government school or a private school, but the nearest school was 5 kilometers away. And
Okay.
that was sort of the premise of starting with funding with Asha Austin. And so that's
Okay.
sort of where I'm going with this, is like, if there's a way, there are plenty of families. I'm sure there are more than 30 families in that village. there are about 100 kids in that
Okay.
going to that school now. So I would like to
Means
know, maybe we can connect offline or something.
yes, but it's the easy thing is also if the project partner can talk to, let's say, like Nandalal Master or Mahesh Pandey, like
Okay.
these are the two Asha fellows, and they have very, especially Nandalal Master has a long history of RTI application and help, and I know
Okay.
it varies from one place to another. So if you can find somebody from Rajasthan who can help at least to understand, but Rajasthan is slightly better than UP, I think.
Yeah,
So at least on the way the things are handled, so maybe they can talk a bit and maybe they can figure out some ways to get it done, you
yeah.
know.
I mean, it's
It's
it's more from a skepticism point of view, like like you said, they. I mean,
yes,
if
it's
I've, they're capable individuals in that NGO. I mean, we've worked with them for a long time, but I mean, I just, I'm a little surprised that it's been like 4 5 years, and this why, like, the land rights has taken. So is it because of land rights that's an issue, that they cannot get a government school, or what's
mm,
the, so again, it's kind of a good opportunity for RTI, for them to do RTI on just for this government school stuff. But I don't know if they pursued it. I haven't asked them yet. So this is something maybe I should get with them and start
okay.
asking
What I
questions.
can do, I can just get you in touch with CCU with Nandala Master, and maybe
Yeah, I'm in touch
they
with.
can talk.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
and then
Nandlal came to Austin, so we are
okay,
in
yes,
touch.
Nandal also came to
Yeah,
Austin, right? So
yeah,
yeah, so you know him also.
yeah,
So that's good. So means I will suggest if you can just look into the paper, and it's much easier to share these days. Means the project partner can just take a picture and send it to them, and maybe you can kind of push
yeah,
Nandalal a bit so that he
yeah,
take it kind of priority to he means if you really want it to be resolved, you have to tell them it's important and things like that.
yeah,
Otherwise always everybody is very busy. There are always problems.
yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, something to add from my end. I think, see, before we get into RTI, actually it's very good, along with the RTI, if we can actually have a small package of key things that people should know while dealing with government. It could be something very, very simple things. Like, for example, if you ever write a letter to government, okay, any kind of letter, it's something very simple that you send it in the conventional registered post with acknowledgement due, because invariably these letters are received by the dispatch clerk, and the first thing he does, even without opening a letter, is that he acknowledges that he has received the letter, and that alone is like a very good start to begin with. Okay, uh, and we can actually make a small compilation that the basic things that people should know while dealing with the government, and this will actually get a few of us, first of all, Asha volunteers, be aware about these things while we work with grassroots level organizations. And second thing is, it also helps the organizations to work with the government better. So possibly that's my suggestion. If we can get from multiple sources how people are done. Like, for example, I'll try to document the whole Tule's application to become a school. They're almost the final stages now, and I would like to document it for other schools that have how to register and become a full-fledged school. So maybe we can try that with multiple partners.
And just like I think that's a very good point. So if somebody has succeeded, at least in that state, it will be similar. So we can have this kind of packages. I think that's a good term. That so we can make a package, right? So that if somebody from the state asks for, oh, we are having this problem, we just tell that these are the things that you have to do, and right. So do document, Balaji.
I'll try and we can just send it across all the teams. See, many times from my own observation, okay, disclosures that I also worked in the government office for 1.5 years. So working with government has always been very productive thing that I always observe. If you could actually sit, understand their rules, regulations, and then work with them, many times you get your work done much effectively than because sometimes RTI ends up becoming a bit of confrontation. Like, because the guy doesn't give you information, you want to keep confronting him with the RTI application. So it needs to be used very carefully. In the sense, if you're going to rub the wrong side with the government officer, and if he's on the right track, your RTI can actually irk him more than actually make him work better. So we have to be, use the RTI very delicately and with some balance.
Balaji, this is Anu. I was wondering, would it help, say, in the wiki, right? We have different guidelines for project stewardship. I'm beginning to think maybe we also have in that a subsection where we say project type guidelines, project specific guidelines, and maybe this could be one of those. And I'll probably start thinking about, how to populate the others.
Yeah, we can. These are all good case studies, like what Padmanava has provided. 3 good examples of how to use RTI effectively. So, one always refer back to these and understand how to use them.
Yeah, so if maybe you could help with compiling that, and we could probably circulate a document, and then I can take the responsibility of putting that on the wiki and linking to the project steward guidelines so that people know where to look.
Sure, yeah.
And even for existing projects, it matters, even for existing projects, it's not always about the new proposal. It's also for existing project who want to go to the next step, or, it's not only for schools, also when we work with the government schools and things like that.
Thanks, Padmanava. That was excellent work, actually. You've done a good start, and yeah, we hope that some of these things that works in some projects can be taken to see. For example, recently Sanjeev was around in Tulir, the project that I work with, and in that village recently they have got a Gram Panchayat president elected with multiple NGOs working together, including Tulir. They've got a Gram Panchayat president elected by putting some really huge amount of work at grassroots level, campaigning, and without any money power, without alcohol, without any of the brute force, they managed to get the Panchayat president elected. And it was good when it happened. We immediately had some reference point, like, Asha supported Mutialappa in the past, Asha Bangalore was a Sarpanch. And then in Asha Varanasi, I think I had supported one candidate for one such Panchayat election, the grassroots level. So we could immediately share some of the common learnings from these projects. So let's work and putting together some of these things what happens in other projects. Yeah.